Well, it's great to be with all you guys. I'll just share it for a little bit, and then we'll open it up, and then we'll Joe share a little bit.
Sounds great.
So, a lot of blessings for me right this weekend. One is simply that I'm with people that love the same sport that I love and understand the value of God in the lives of these people. A big blessing for me. You know, a few summers ago, my family traveled across the country, and together as a family, and really didn't pay for a thing the whole way. Right, along the journey across the country, there were relationships that we had built, you know, through the sport of wrestling, this brotherhood. One was an astronaut, right? Was a commander of the space shuttle, former wrestler, Don Gory. Put us up at his house a few nights. There was a doctor. There was a guy that was a radiology place. And we traveled the country. We just ran across the people along the way we've met and have touched my life, and in some way I've touched their life. They wanted to reciprocate and help us. So obviously incredibly blessed to, you know, you often wonder, did I find this sport, or did it find us, right? Did we find it, or did it find us? And I'm an extremely normal person. I've been blessed by a sport and by a God that I've come to know is true and real, more so than I know anything else. My two favorite things to talk about is outside of my kids, right, is wrestling and God. So that's one blessing, is to spend time with guys that are doing the same thing I'm doing. It's been a blessing. Just obviously Joe is really busy. He's a student athlete. So to spend some time with Joe where he's not all wound up in competing. He's not competing this weekend. So it's really cool that, you know, you all allowed me. You know, we planned to bring a student athlete, and Joe is someone who's really growing in his faith. He's a team captain for us. And just to spend time with Joe, you know, outside the typical daily routine of coach athlete is a blessing for us. I appreciate the pickup at the airport. I appreciate the hot rod I'm in. So it's just nice and kind of you to let us use your car. I mean, that's just what we run across, right? Once you've wrestled or understand the people in the sport, right, our heart's open to them. So I'm not a, I don't want to say I'm a believer. Right? I'm a believer. I believe that Jesus is who he said he was. I don't want to go too much in my testimony because I'll share it tomorrow, but I'll bring you to a time after I had already determined by using common sense and hours logged of research, whether God is real or whether pure evolution is true. So there was a dark time in my life, the darkest time in my life, when I was on my knees, and it certainly wasn't from a state championship loss or a second place in the national tournament as a team, or it was what I call unchosen suffering, which happens in this life. So it was a dark time for me, and I consider just the two things that are possible. And one is that there's a God, and one there isn't. And I determined, I'd been through the process of considering both and researching both. And I was, about a year later, after I had become a believer, the Ohio State job opened up. And to this day, I would say that position had probably been it was the catalyst to nearly 20 job changes that year. It was a sought-after job that, quite frankly, wasn't a job that I ever said as a young man, God, lead me there. Right? I wasn't, my dad wasn't a coach. I wasn't raised to be a coach, I don't think. I was raised in a home that had the deepest love, the deepest truth, amazing examples, but never in my life, even up until my senior year in college, did I salivate about being a coach. But I think once we get to know God, we reflect. And when I do reflect, I see all of these scenarios where I believe, I don't believe in chance. So if you don't believe in chance, I believe that along the way, every step, there was a guided process where God was with me. So the scenario is Ohio State opens up. I'm happy at Hofstra. My team was doing really well. My family was on Long Island, and things were going great. a year earlier, I had suffered the darkest time in my life, and I was in the midst of that dark time when the Ohio State job opened up. A year before the Ohio State job opened up, the UPenn job opened up, and the AD came and met with me. And something even told me at that time that I didn't know God at the time. I did not believe in God. I just wasn't walking with God. And I just felt that there was something different for our family. And I chose to not pursue the position. And fast forward, a year later, Ohio State opens up. I had become a Christian the year before the Ohio State job opened up, so 2005. That year was the darkest year of my life. And I considered those two options that I shared, God or no God, and I'd become a Christian. So my wife is from Bloomington, Indiana. I met her when my first coaching job was at IU. I met her there. We were joking about how deeply spiritual the beginning was. I loved her miniskirt, and I liked her legs, and I liked her eyes. So I was hooked at first sight. We got married, and we were living in New York. And when this job opened up, as the process went along, I decided I would interview here. And I was working daily on my faith, partially out of survival, just survival. I was just trying to make sense of the despair, and I remember sitting outside the room, the interview room. I knew who was on the committee, and praying to God that my wife was crying the night before because we walked on campus. It was closer to home, and she really wanted me to get the position. And I just kept telling her, listen, if God wants us here, that it'll be, and I'll do everything I can. I'll prepare as diligently as I can. I'll share how I'll lead. And I was outside the room praying, and I basically, God, if this is your calling for me, then I will represent you. I will do all that I can for your kingdom, over all things. So I get into the room, and I'm in the middle of this interview, and I started to share about a book I just finished about grace and truth, and how Jesus was the perfect combination of both, truth and love. So some may say that at a state institution that's not something you should discuss, but it pours out of me. It's my belief system. So for me to, I guess, pretend I was not going to lead in this way would have been unfair to the committee. So I share with the committee, and a week later I got a call from the head of the committee. I didn't know that 5 of the 8 were strong Christians, but God, I guess God knew that, I would say. He definitely knew that. So I remember calling me on a Saturday morning and saying, listen, you're going to be, if you want to be the next head coach at Ohio State. And the objective, so the point in all that for me is just that I made a commitment that if you put me in this position, right, I may know less than some of you, or many of you. I know less than many of you in certain areas. And maybe even there are some things you've done along the way in coaching that I could learn from, right? But for some reason, you put this logo on, and the world says you're identified by the organization that you're with so often, right? I'm just a normal guy that loves God, that happened to wrestle in a program under a legendary coach who my connection to him helped me get a jump start over someone that might have been better than me that wasn't around him, and I'm just really blessed. And my commitment was simply that as the coach at Ohio State, I will do the 3 things that all leaders do, that Jesus did. Only I will fall more than Jesus fell. So the first is be an example. Right? I think the greatest teacher, when I think about the people in my life, that there's three things that all leaders do, and the first is they're examples. Right? We follow the people that we want to model, be the most like. The second thing is they embrace pain and suffering. So hard things are going to come as a leader. You may have to throw someone off your team. You may have to remove a coach. You may have to, there's enough deal with tough situations with parents, but it's a responsibility that we live with to deal with those things, embrace pain and suffering, and then share truth and love. And you know, to have the tough conversations, to you know, to be the one that you know, carries those things with them as a leader. So yeah, I'm fortunate. I've had I've learned a lot at Ohio State. I'm around some amazing people. Athletes lead up there. Joey leads up. Kyle Snyder, a tremendous example. Nathan Tomasello, Bo Jordan, Miles Moore, just some of the people that we have. I see a connection, and I'm sure you guys do as well. I see a connection between character and sustained success. I think character is the linchpin to sustained success, which is what we all want. Nobody here wants to have a successful team for one season or two. I want Ohio State wrestling to be successful for the next 100 years. And sustained success has a couple of components, and the most critical component of sustained success is decision making, is character. Talent, we all have talented guys that will win, and you mix talent and hard work, and you'll really win. Super talent, super hard work, you'll really win, but it doesn't mean you'll stay there. Right? It means you'll have a really good season or a couple of good seasons. But the ability to run from the madness of this world and move toward the things that we know that God teaches, that's sustained success. So I feel really good about the people that are in our culture that I think they understand that. So in my aim is to build an environment with this deep love. There's deep love for what these guys do. There's deep love for each other. There's truth, there's honesty, and there's a group of guys that let's get the big picture. And Joe is, I mean, I'll just start before I'll introduce Joe. He's you know, one of, and he's one of, I don't know the number of coaches, you guys may know the number, but I was in the car with him. We were a little late because there's a channel 63 on Sirius Radio, is Christian Rock. And Christian Rock for me is my go-to. On the way to work, on the way home, to and from work, 104.9 in Columbus is the go-to. So we were listening to some music, and I said to Joe, man, I wonder how many people, and I've thought this before at this moment, how many college athletes, right, have won the U.S. Open? Right, so it's like, you know, we all know, it's like going from, you know, junior high to winning the state tournament in 6th, 7th grade, 7th grade. It's rare, it's incredibly rare. It's like, you know, going from high school to pro football. It just doesn't happen, right? Or basketball. So Joe was a U.S. Open champ. Joe was a guy that I recruited diligently out of high school. Not diligently enough. He told me that I wasn't good enough. That
You said that?
Yeah,
no, he didn't say that. He's the man. I wanted him bad. We loved him. You know, he fit our culture, right? He's super smart. We went to, but listen, he chose Stanford. So he wrestled at Stanford for 2 years. So I don't want to go too much into the story, but I love him. He's a great leader for us. Really grateful that Joe, and he's heard me say that before, he's really grateful that he chose to believe that his life would move forward as much as it would have at Stanford as at Ohio State. So, like I said, he's in his only second year at Ohio State as a team captain, so I think that speaks volumes. So that's Joe McKenna.
Yep. So I'm Joey. Originally from New Jersey, from Montville Township. Went to Blair Academy for high school. My senior year of high school, Coach Tom called me up and, you know, gave me the normal I'm sitting in my driveway. I just pulled in from practice and I see this Ohio number pop up. I'm like, what's this? Answer, hey Joey, it's Tom Ryan. How you doing? Oh, hey Coach, how you doing? You know, you're saying, you know, we watched you over the years. We're really interested. You know, we'd love to get you out on campus. You know, we have Logan Stieber, our, you know, he's going into his last year next year. You know, we think you're a 41. You come in, fill the spot, come in, you know, red shirt underneath him, and then start right after him. You know, be a great gig. And I remember it clear as day. I said, Coach, that's great and all, but you know, I really appreciate it, but I'm just not interested. You know, I think that I want to go to an Ivy League school. I want to go, you know, gone to Blair, and you know, I want to go to a really good academic school. Not that Ohio State's not, but I want to go to an Ivy League or a
He's very
Stanford. So, you know, I thanked him for his time, and I hung up the phone. And there was always a part of me after that that kind of felt uneasy about the way that happened. So after my senior year, I took a gap year where I didn't go to Stanford. I traveled internationally wrestling, and I worked for a construction management company in New York City. And I traveled with Kyle Snyder a lot, and there was, me and him just always, we were pretty good friends, and we just always talked about like what it would be like if I went to Ohio State. And at that point I was kind of wavering on my original decision to go to Stanford, because I was in this gap year, this deferral year basically, where I could kind of redo if I wanted. But I held true to my commitment, and me and Kyle just always talked about it and fantasized about it until 2 years later it became a reality. And I don't know what it was. I grew up Catholic, always believed in God, but never really had a relationship with Him, never really walked with Christ. And in my sophomore year at Stanford, there was just an emptiness that I had. I just felt this emptiness, felt this void, and you know, there are a lot of little things that went into it, being far from home all the way on the West Coast. Just my wrestling, my priceless, as Coach was saying before, or what I figured out to be my priceless just wasn't being met. And that kind of really made me rethink what I wanted to do. And I'll tell you guys this, but my sophomore year before nationals, the night before, laying in bed, about to go wrestle my second national tournament for Stanford, and I don't know why I just can't get this picture out of my head of me walking out on the mat with a Blocko on my chest. And I'm like, this is just a weird feel. Like, why am I thinking of it? Like, this isn't right. Like, this isn't the right mindset. Like, why? This isn't good. Like, this is not good. So after that, and just a lot of reflection throughout that year, I figured out that Stanford wasn't the place for me. And the first place I wanted to look was Ohio State. And when I did that, it was, I don't know, May something, I went out for a visit, and immediately, just the people that picked me up from the airport, the people I surrounded myself, going into practice and just watching practice, I just felt the motivation. It was just contagious. Like, I could just feel it. Everybody here is driven. Everybody here loves each other. Like, this is the place that I want to be. This is something I want to be a part of. And so that summer, it was a pretty grueling process, going through the recruiting process a second time, looking to transfer, especially from a place like Stanford. But it was my birthday, August 3rd. Still hadn't committed anywhere. School started